All right, it's 4:01, so we're going to call the meeting to order. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll go around and do introductions quickly for a couple of us who have not been here before. Michael Helfrich has just ducked out for a moment, but anyone start?
I'm Hannah from the Daily Record.
I'm Robert from Rodriguez.
Jordan Fouts from Barron Munchline.
Nikki Davis, Community and Economic Development.
Jody Chaslow, the Office Manager for Downtown 8.
Mika Roscoe, Health and Sanitation Officer.
Darren Borden, hot dog.
Jim Garcia, City of York.
Natalie Williams, Downtown 8.
Bill Greenwald with Gladfellow Insurance.
Jane Conover with the York County Community Foundation.
And we're going to start with public comment, and Jane has some notes, and I just wanted to remind you that it's a 3-minute.
Yes,
For
I will speed read.
Okay.
Thank you so much for letting me talk today. I'm here representing the York County Community Foundation's Advocacy Council. This is the council we use to make public comments on issues affecting our community. So I'm here because I wanted to let you know, and as many of you do know, that in 2006, the York County Community Foundation engaged our community in a planning process to develop strategies to beautify the city of York. That process resulted in 29 community beautification projects that were being proposed through the Beautiful York Action Plan. One of the projects was reclaiming Continental Square. So in 2012, the Foundation's Beautiful York Committee, the Beautiful York Committee is a committee of the Foundation that's established to help promote projects that beautify the city of York, and we have grant funds to give out to help promote projects that beautify the city. So we took the lead in developing concepts for Continental Square, and we hired Murphy and Dittenhafer Architects to conduct a conceptual design process with community input. The key objectives of the planning process were to do something courageous and bold and special, but to balance that with costs, to go for excellence, not just being better, to integrate the design of the square, not just create a hodgepodge, accommodating the right business mixes on the square, have space for outdoor programs and events, to have distinctive site amenities, have pedestrian-friendly space, greenery and plantings, public art, respect the history of the site, have public safety and cleanliness, consideration for the environment, meaning that we can use energy-efficient practices wherever possible, and consideration of maintenance costs. So those conceptual designs for the square were completed in 2013, and they're now being advanced by Downtown Inc. as part of their Moving Plans into Action initiative. So based on those priorities that the Community Foundation and our Beautiful York Committee developed, we reviewed the food cart initiative, and we thought we'd come to you today to share some thoughts and comments we have about the food carts. These are some recommendations we would make to you. They're on the second page. So consistent with our commitment to what we call declutter the square and make space for people to gather, we would recommend no more than 2 carts should be located on the square. A food cart should not be permitted on corners of the square where there are potential restaurants that could occupy the space there, because we would not want to deter food-related businesses from locating in the vacant space on the square. We would recommend high-quality design standards that should be developed so the carts are attractive and also have appropriate containers for garbage and things. We think there should be limits in the amount of space any food cart occupies on the square, so they're not taking over seating area where people could be, or have too much signage or other items spread out in the way of pedestrians. And because of parking issues at the square and aesthetics, really, we don't recommend any food trucks be parked at the square. I'm not sure if you're considering that or not, but we think that they're better located in a zoned area or in a specific block rather than scattered throughout downtown. And that zone area we would recommend would not be near existing restaurants, so that it's complementary. It's another location for people to go and get food, but they would not detract from the existing businesses. That's it. I thank you for your consideration.
3 minutes.
Did I? Wow.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Any questions about that?
Certainly put it in your advice.
All right. Thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Just like to thank you for allowing the recording devices, and I'm glad to be here documenting the meeting.
So just to go back and review the notes from the last meeting, you have the spreadsheet that we're working off of and the items that we're trying to work through, the elements associated with each one of the carts and the food trucks. So at the last meeting, we addressed hours of operation, seasonal, special events, product offerings, and cart design standards. Any questions on what we covered last month before we move on to the elements that we're going to talk about today?
I have a question. Why are our hours of operations, I'm sorry. Okay, I was looking at, I picked up 7 to 2 and I went to 2. That doesn't make any sense.
2A.
2A. Helps you read the whole sentence.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so the things we're talking about today are noise regulations, insurance, refuse enforcement, and licensing fees and issuing processes. And I took the liberty of moving licensing fees and issuing process to the last part of the agenda because I knew that was going to take a lot of conversation and a lot of dialogue. But as far as the noise, insurance, refuse, and enforcement, I've asked Tamika to talk to us today about what currently exists as far as regulations and enforcement of those regulations, and what she would like to see, or what her recommendations would be, specifically as it relates to the carts. Now, just remind you, we're not talking about the food trucks, we're talking about the carts. So can you address how you, with the existing cart that's in operation now, and how you would go about addressing with the existing regulation, how you would address multiple carts in the downtown or outside the downtown, as far as noise, insurance, refuse, etc., how that would go relating to the existing ordinance now?
Well, for me, I don't deal with noise regulations, and I don't deal with insurance. The refuge, I don't deal with. I just require that they have a trash can with a lid. It depends on what property they're on. If you're on city property and trash is left there, the city's responsible to remove it because it falls on the property owner. So refuge, I don't deal with. Enforcement, I license you. I make sure first you pass your health inspection, but after that, you have one inspection a year. The only time you see me again is if I get complaints. Any complaint, I have to verify. But you have to realize whatever someone tells me, I can only go by what I see at the time of inspection. So you may have seen something that I won't see. So if I have 10 carts and I get flooded with phone calls about, well, they're doing this or they're not doing this, I have to run out to each cart to verify, but they may not be doing it when I pull up. So it's a lot of running, and Darren seen me many times, just phone call, but you haven't seen me in a long time this year. But yeah, to me it's a learning process. Once you learn what you're doing wrong, then hopefully you'll never see me again until you have to. But I have to also say, just because you have a license with the city, if you do not live in the city, your commissary is checked by the state. So if there's a problem at your commissary that I can't check, now I gotta get the state involved to go check your commissary to make sure everything is okay there. So he gets checked by the state for his commissary at his home. I only check your cart. So,
Yeah, that's true.
no.
We all get the same things or conversations.
Yeah, so a lot of times I might have to get the state involved because your commissary isn't in the city. Once I license you and you pass your health inspection, you shouldn't see me again for another year unless it's a complaint. And complaints could bare hand contacts with ready-to-eat food, anything the general public sees and they feel as though it's not right, they're gonna call. So every complaint, I have to go and just check it out.
So the noise insurance, those things come, well, noise would come with, how does that work if there's a noise complaint? Is that nuisance, but that comes under nuisance and that would
I would think the
be
police.
addressed to the
Yeah.
lady, so the police department.
Mhm.
Doesn't it still fall under regulations of licensure?
Yeah, I don't think it would fall under
Regardless of the
this.
parameters of
Right.
why we issue the license.
I don't think it would, I think it's
We
overriding,
need to
codified,
reference.
it's not, it has nothing to do with this particular ordinance.
Well, within that, are we looking at violation structure?
That's a good question, though. I think that's the enforcement question.
In the outdoor cafe standards that we just amended, we said 3 violations of any type of ordinance could be a revocation of license. Just for reference.
Like, was that inside the sidewalk ordinance, or is that the noise ordinance?
That's within the sidewalk cafe ordinance, but it references all ordinances. So if you get a violation of anything, you'll get a mark.
3, so 3 strikes you're out.
Yes.
And
3
we could-
strikes and you could be out. We worded it, but it's not automatic.
What determines whether or not it's,
The nature.
Yeah,
Like so.
if it's egregious, if it's accidental, it gives the authority of the city as the permitting body.
to revoke the license?
Yes.
So does it make sense to incorporate that into this?
Yeah.
Does everybody feel that's okay? And it makes sense to have it consistent with the sidewalk cafe ordinance. Okay. And then the insurance, that comes with the business license, right? Tamika, that's outside of.
When you fill out your new business packet, I think the front end makes sure you have your insurance.
Okay, so that's covered.
Can I ask a question regarding insurance? Is it specific parameters with regard to what is needed in the insurance requirements?
I don't deal with the insurance.
As far as parameters, like $1 million, $2 million policy,
I don't know,
what does it
Natalie, is
cover?
there, do you know anything
All
about
property.
I don't really think
Yeah.
that, as far as I know, I don't really think Clemens Planning and Zoning is researching each individual's insurance policy.
There-
That's a part when you fill out your new business application. I don't think they're researching the type of policies.
Right, but this is a business that's occurring on city property, which makes the city liable, and therefore the city needs to be indemnified through insurance. So I would say similar to what we just attempted to do with the booting, because there's a potential for that to occur on city property. We were very specific about, now that didn't get passed, but in the drafting of the legislation, we were very specific about what kind of insurance you needed to have.
That goes through PPZ. All right, well, what we can do is we can do some research and see what would be required for the carpet on city property. When it's on private property, that's different. Yes. Because the private property owner would want the vendor to have a whole harmless clause on their insurance, yes?
Yes, but we always have to ask, when you say private property, are you talking about private public sidewalks, or are you talking about private property?
I know we addressed that last time.
That's that vague area where I'm not sure whether the city, I mean, it's my understanding that the city could be held liable for things that are occurring on the sidewalk. But I'm not making a solicitor's judgment on
How about
it.
if we do some research on the staff level, we'll talk to PPZ and see what's required and what they recommend. Sound good? And then the refuse, you say, Tamika, you have them, it's a requirement that they have trash receptacle with a lid.
With the lid.
Okay, and so does that need to be included in this, in the ordinance?
Well, every
Currently is, isn't it?
I think it is.
What's that?
every vendor should be following the Pennsylvania Food Code, and it's part of the food code, so if you don't have it, you're not following the food code.
so we don't need to have it in.
I think that concerned me. I mean, it should be carry in, carry out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it should be carry on, carry
If
out.
you're bringing it with them, it should be leaving. Unless it's, think about the hot dog, if there's a hot dog right away, that's fine, but they're creating refuge, you should take that.
So you want carry out and carry out language?
Yeah, because in regards to everything that we talked about, I do want to just remind everyone that the state of PA licensure, if you get licensed by the state of PA, any particular municipality that you go into, that particular license then becomes null and void. In that municipality, they have a running health department. So, I mean, it should be worded in anything that we agree about, just to cover the basis.
So the licenses that food trucks have through Pennsylvania USDA is no longer valid when they come into the city because we have our own health department?
That's correct. Your licensure becomes null and void when you come into the
The health
municipality.
license does.
What's that?
The health license would.
The health license does,
Mhm.
which is not the same as the USDA license.
That is the US.
That is essentially-
All that is the health
Supersedes
license.
state.
So for food truck, are you guys all getting new licenses through the city health
We're getting
department?
special permit licenses.
That's the only
Municipal-
loop around that.
Municipal code supersedes state. Enforcement, anything else you want to add about enforcement? Anything that we should be aware of, that we should be including in these recommendations to city council that you think is important? That we don't want to overlook?
Bathroom is major for me. If you don't have a place and it's not documented, you have permission to use whatever's near you, the restroom, then you shouldn't be in that area.
And that's part of the, is that part of the application process now?
I get a letter stating where he is allowed to use the bathroom, subway.
Okay, so you
But-
get a letter from the
Mhm.
property owner for that.
Is there a certain distance it has to be, or is that just kind of up to you? If you feel it's too far?
Yeah. It's up to me. I mean, as long as it's not too far away, but at that time, someone always has to be at
You
that
can't
park.
leave it unattended.
Can't leave it unattended. At least one person there at all times.
Have to be an employee or anybody?
Should be an employee, not
Yes.
just anybody.
And over 18.
Mm. Yeah, you just don't want just anyone to watch your cart while you run to the bathroom.
Tamika, what are your current hours of enforcement?
I would say 24 hours.
In reality, when do you work?
I work 8 to 5,
She works 24 hours, that's it.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
But if I get a call that I need to run out because of sewage, or I go running. 10 o'clock calls.
All right. Let's move on to licensing fees and.
Well, do we want to discuss enforcement? Or are we just getting a report?
We can discuss it. It sort of,
As long as they're following the
Self-explanatory,
food
right?
code and there's ample room for public to go through, and I don't get a lot of phone calls,
and that's the 6 foot, wait,
a pathway.
right, 6 foot.
I always
outside.
think of it like a wheelchair. Can a wheelchair get through there?
And it is 6 feet. Did you have any comments or concerns
Well-
about enforcement?
6 feet from the foot of the curb.
From any impediment. So if there's a tree,
Mhm.
it has to be 6 feet between the tree or the tree well and
Okay.
whether it's a fence, a cart,
So you want a two-way, 3 foot
it's 6
median
feet.
backward, two ways, okay.
I mean,
And
my concern is that we're going from one location to potentially 30 times the amount of work with one staff person who is really working 8 to 5. And we just already said we could have 30 food carts from 7 a.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning. So we've increased the amount of opportunity for violations without increasing the enforcement. How much time, so this year, our one operation is doing better. What kind of time do you think you had to put into that sector of your job last year? Can you imagine, or can you?
Checking on the food cart?
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, I probably only went out there 3 times to speak to him. Because I only go by what I see at that time. So if he's not doing anything wrong when I get there, I can only talk about what the complaint was and go from there.
Well, what about the time for paperwork and receiving the complaint and travel?
I mean, it would stop me from doing, I have over 430 food establishments I gotta do, schools twice, I do hoarding and I do houses. So it just stops me from doing my regular work that I should be doing.
Right. I'm trying to get a numeric estimate of the additional amount of labor that is going to be required from city staff.
I mean, I have to write up a report and file it. I mean, he's just one person, but if I have a lot, it will stop me from doing.
That's why I'm trying to get,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get what you're doing now so I can multiply it by 30.
But if we were to bring 30 new businesses and 30 new restaurants into Inline, she would add that to her.
Right, but the taxes paid by those 30 new businesses would potentially offset the cost.
Right.
And
That's what I was gonna ask.
and this, we haven't yet established a fee. So what I'm asking her is data that I want to put into understanding what kind of fee we have to establish.
So what percentage of your job would you say was spent on the food cart?
Percentage would be almost null, but if you
Yeah.
have three trips out there, is it 2 hours? Is it?
For those 3 trips, probably a half an hour in total, just speaking with them and telling him the rules and how it should be done. I mean, he's
And
never,
then filing a report?
and I write a report, he signs it, I go to the office, file it away in his file.
And that whole time only took you half an hour to go down there, come back, file a report?
I mean, when I'm done, I won't go, I could do that like the next day. I'll go to a restaurant and do an inspection, and when I get back to the office, I'll file it away. But in between, I'll stop and handle the complaints. Just like I get calls for complaints on houses right now. In between, I'll stop, handle something else, and then get back on
Are there
track.
fines associated with some of those complaints?
Only if I give you a warning, a written warning, and then you're found to do it again, then I can issue a citation.
And what's the citation? What's the amount?
That's totally up to the magistrate.
So now you're talking about the same issues we have with property maintenance and things like that. So now you're talking about the time of doing all the paperwork, getting the paperwork to the magistrate, spending time going to the magistrate for a random chance that you might get a fine. That's what we're dealing with, which is why we're putting in a new ticketing on those types of violations.
My question to you, Tamika, if you foresee that the expansion of these licenses, do you foresee really just you, or is it 2 people in your department, or just you, right?
I did have an assistant, but since some people in the department have left, she no longer helps me, so
Okay.
everything's on me.
So, in hindsight, and looking to the future, and we expect to, we're looking to expand these licenses and the amount of work that's going into it, do you foresee that additional 1 or 2 individuals I mean, you're talking about 400 establishments, I guess, within York County or within
York
York
City.
City? Okay. So do you foresee either, if not just one more person or two more persons that would be needed? What do you physically see?
I see whatever the city requires.
Okay.
Because I have a job and
Right.
I just do it. Regardless how much it is, I just do it. So if the city feels as though there should be more, then that's their choice.
I know we're doing some documentation here, so just for documentation purposes, there was no complaints for all calendar year 2014 and 2015 thus far. Any complaints that health department received was mid-2013, FYI.
It was in the very beginning.
So noted.
I have not seen Darren in a long time. And your inspection is due.
No, I think it's on the things that she covers. I think we do have issues with noise regulations and enforcement of that, because my personal experience was that when I called for the police to enforce against an illegal food truck, I got no response. So being that that is not a priority of our somewhat strapped police department, it's hard for me to imagine that on a Friday night when there's violence going on around our city, that we're going to be able to get enforcement for noise violations.
Isn't it true with the cafes or so, if they're open later? And would you have the same issue getting the police there as you would to a food truck, you think?
Right, except for the cafes are already associated with a business that's paying taxes that pay for the police department.
So what is the language around the
And you're
noise
adding-
ordinance
you're adding
in the
30.
sidewalk cafe?
It also
There
depends on
there is none.
what your game is. I mean, if you serve liquor, you're subject to LCE, and that has nothing to do with the cops.
Right,
Let's get real. Liquor control controls noise coming from your establishment if you serve liquor.
Yeah,
It
it's-
cannot come out of your walls legally.
Yeah, it's a mutual thing. We can do something, but the real hammer
Is liquor
is
control.
the state.
So that's a whole
thousands-
different
that's
level of
thousands of
enforcement.
dollars of penalties immediately.
But that doesn't apply to trucks.
But that does not apply to,
Wouldn't apply to anybody not serving liquor.
right.
But if you're open on a Friday, Saturday night, odds are you're serving liquor if you're a restaurant. So that noise issue gets managed under that.
And that would fall
Sledgehammer.
under the sidewalk cafe, because most of them are.
All of them. Well, no,
They're
that's
true.
true. Most of them, right. We have two now that have two tables that aren't open past.
My question to your councilman is, do we have public safety officers apart from just our regular police force in the CBD?
Not
We
during,
have law enforcement, we have sheriffs, and we have York City PD.
There's no
They're
right, there's
designated.
nobody designated. There are people designated to the downtown as their area.
Yeah, but
they're
apart from
not-
that, there's not general public safety in which it's true the business districts and patrol business districts.
No, they're police officers. So you're suggesting we write in something that relates to the noise?
I'm just suggesting a lack of enforcement, and I don't have an answer.
No, I don't think we have an answer for that here either, on the noise. I mean, I don't think we're here to address the police response rate on a
Well,
noise complaint.
If we are suggesting an additional public activity, with that public activity comes a responsibility for us to explain how we're going to offset any impact.
And your suggestion?
I have an answer, that's what I'm saying.
Anybody else
We
have
have
a
problem.
suggestion around the noise ordinance? Around the noise language for the ordinance?
we have to bring
I mean,
the chief in and
they will be registered businesses with the city, so I mean, if there's, you know, if there's multiple complaints against them, it's going to be investigated.
And would that not fall under the 3 strikes you're out?
oh yeah,
I mean, like,
if it gets enforced, yes.
I mean, well, but in the case of like the guy,
And filed.
Oh, can it? Oh, we never get tied together.
Yeah. If it gets enforced,
If
it
you,
gets
if
filed.
you call Kaylee's group, and he's got a complaint, they go out, Mike Davis goes out, and he has a conversation, doesn't really do anything. Tamika's the one keeping track of the strikes, right? The police aren't sending her the reports that say, hey, we've done X, Y, and Z.
Well, no, we have I mean, is this gonna be a responsibility of the committee? Or is the committee just an authorizing body?
I don't
and
think
not
the
an
committee,
oversight?
yeah, I don't think the committee's in charge of going out and enforcing.
No, I'm not saying that, but in keeping track of enforcement actions, to
I-
be the hub
I
of
see it.
information from the police department and the health bureau.
Well, how does it
To
happen
that
now?
extent.
Like for the sidewalk
It
cafe
does,
or a restaurant?
we just created that, so.
What-
That's a good question.
For a-
What ad-
And
do you not know that?
What's the procedure?
What's the avenue of enforcement?
I don't
For
know,
a
we made
sidewalk
the rule.
cafe.
We
Yeah.
made the rule and we didn't include direction. It would be, and I guess you could say the same thing about this, it's upon the administration to determine how they are going to enforce the
But
laws.
who does the initial investigation? Is it the
It depends.
officers?
It's some of it would be, well, for the noise, yes, it would be a
For
police
It
officer.
would be police, so police report would have to be filed then, I guess, right? Or is that how you vote?
If they choose to waste 30 minutes or whatever on filing a police report instead of being out and protecting us, that's where the rub is that, and why lots of things that some people think are crimes are considered minor or overlooked because of the amount of time it takes to actually file paperwork
Right.
for somebody throwing a piece of trash down.
Are the calls registered?
You know?
Is it, when people call us, they call directly to the police department or is it? a
Yeah, actually, you have to
911
call
picture?
911, which is a shame, because you tie up 911.
But isn't the issue too with the noise ordinance that it's the acceptable level that you deem a noise issue? Isn't that how the noise ordinance is written? So like,
Yes.
I may think that something is outrageous, but my neighbor over here might not. So doesn't that already kind of like raise a question?
It's very subjective.
It's very like, so
there-
just because
There used to
someone,
be a decibel limit
but
and
there's not
and a
anymore,
time,
right?
and there's not anymore.
right,
Now it's subjective to the
So,
police officer.
if it's a subjective complaint and Jordan has his food truck on West Market Street and it's subjective, then how can you go by how can you go by just the calls of an incident for enforcement? Do you get,
Because it's a local taxpayer that's calling in.
Yeah, but that seems
We're
totally
not
crazy
talking about
based
calls, we're
on
talking about violations.
locations. You get some crazy grandma that wants to hear complete silence at 10 o'clock and she's ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing.
well, we don't know how enforcement's gonna be.
That could,
So we don't know if it's gonna be, we don't know if it's gonna be calls, or we haven't determined that, but I'm just saying, I hope we wouldn't do it
Yeah, I
by
would hope
calls
not,
alone.
too.
No, it's
Or by
very-
calls alone, I think it should be by a formal complaint, right?
It's not by a complaint, it's by violation,
By violation.
not by complaint.
So it would technically have to be, the police officer would have to write
Ticket.
a ticket or file a report.
Right. So the question at hand is whether or not 11 o'clock at night, a police officer wants to spend 20, 30 minutes filing a report.
but you know that's not gonna happen.
That's- and that's
99% of them,
That's
no
my-
way.
That's my
But then
point.
that deters really any business, if you think about it. It deters any business, because I can tell you that just because I'm at the Holy Hound at 11 o'clock at night, doesn't mean that it's quiet. I mean, did that deter Scott from opening that up and allowing for sidewalk seating at his place?
No, it's the opposite of deterring it. It promotes it because there is no enforcement. Or what are you saying, the existing situation deters it? Well, yeah, because we got complaints from people about some of our existing establishments creating noise and not being responsible for the noise. And now they are responsible for it.
Through the sidewalk cafe permit, basically.
So it really begs the question,
Through police enforcement,
Yeah.
which is the avenue it carries
Right.
now.
Right.
Which I would submit in consistency and keeping in line with consistency, I would submit that we keep that. I mean, we can't create laws and rules because one particular avenue is a vacuum, is currently a vacuum.
Right, but we are creating an additional situation that requires enforcement that doesn't exist now. So we are increasing the burden on rules that are currently not, and the potential for violations of rules that are already difficult to enforce.
And across multiple departments.
so why is it, let me ask you this, why is it the police are the only ones that respond to notice?
Who else is,
Well, if I think it's the health department and I call and complain to the health department at 11 o'clock, Tamika's indicated she's not gonna do anything, that's a police action. So my complaint's falling on deaf ears, and until I get to something, until I figure out that I have to call 911, and then as a good citizen of York County, am I really calling 911 to stress those resources?
Right.
Or am I just gonna put up with it?
well, that's another issue.
It's a lot of grief. I mean, if I had a complaint in my neighborhood, I wouldn't be calling anyone at my municipality, I'd be calling the police department.
What happens in Baltimore is that most of the residents call the direct district office, the direct district police, like the central number, as opposed to 911.
Yeah,
Because
but
it's not
you
emergency
can't do
Does
number.
that have anything to do with the county-based system though in Maryland?
You can't do that here anymore.
No.
They'll tell you to call, they'll turn around and tell you to call 911.
They'll tell you how 911, so that's fair. But
But that's different
it's different.
So, in
Response
the
there.
absence of the police enforcing it, who would you suggest is in charge of enforcing the noise?
Yeah, that's true.
Or the noise,
Public safety officer.
we don't have those.
That's, I'm just throwing it
We
out
don't
there.
have
Well,
those.
no, and but it's a
Just
good
throw
point,
it
is
out
that
there.
what
We have a
we're-
community police,
But I'm just saying that.
What the
Right,
question
we're not
is,
gonna-
again, is what kind of additional resources the city is going to have to
Mhm.
require to allow these new activities. So, I think his comment is accurate, you know, do we have to, if there's going to be more activity downtown, more sidewalk activity, and of course we want this, I don't,
Not careful, you must say
but, no, because they're still not paying the taxes to pay for it. So, this is all part of me trying to figure out what the additional cost will be so we can figure out a proper fee that is going to offset these expenses. So,
So
And
when
some
you
of that
put the
snowballs. I mean, you
enforcement-
can't, you know, I hope you're not looking at the structure that gets created by this conversation leading to a direct line of cost. Because there are other beneficiaries of expended money being spent in downtown York that are brick and mortar by having the food trucks or the food carts there. In the evenings and weekends when it isn't happening now. You know, I mean, I see some of the retail establishments, it actually catches on and grows, staying open later, keeping longer hours. But I think that's down the road, Michael. I don't think that's immediate. You know, the real question is Tamika's working 8 to 5, 5 days a week. Do we want her out at 11 o'clock at time and a half or whatever, you know, however that works out? Or do we want to add a part-time person to monitor the Thursday, Friday, Saturday hours? I mean, that's something that you guys have to figure out.
no, that's good.
But that's a better solution to me.
What was that?
I said, I don't get extra money. It's all, if I get a call, I go. I mean, it's just
So
part
your
of my
salary,
job.
and you don't get paid hourly at all?
Well, thank you for doing that.
I
You
mean,
know,
I just do
You
what I gotta
can't
do.
connect the dots between this is what it's gonna cost and this is the revenue we're gonna generate.
no, right, I
You can't
absolutely agree with
connect, you
that.
can't make a linear conclusion.
Long term.
Right.
You can short term, but the cost would be astronomical. Because you're talking about 7.5% of her work. She has 430 restaurants, 43 is 10%, you're talking about 30. So you're about 6.57% extra work. So.
That's
you
if
know.
there's 30 carts.
Well, but we're also talking about trucks, not, we
We haven't
approved
gotten- we
26
haven't gotten
cars,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
point, so you gotta figure out, you're gonna go there, plus the
You
trucks.
could get.
Right, you can go, right. But, so, I actually like the idea, what you're talking about. Which then works and that's not something untried in New York City police history.
But it's another $100,000 expenditure.
We have at Downtown 8, just so you know, we're talking about adding deployment, subsidizing the deployment of additional officers on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings from 4 to midnight in the Market District. So that, that's another variable that we can play into this. We're looking at privately supporting that, finding private dollars. So that's another avenue to pursue. But in the meantime, as far as noise
but we-
regulations, I think we need to,
Just point out, we're going till 2.
right.
Well, doesn't that beg the question that health should handle some of that? If we know, that if we openly acknowledge the police department will never follow the book, it would have to be egregious and continue. It'd have to have showed up the third time to irritate Blake or Mike to the point that they're gonna write a ticket. If that's the case, then shouldn't we have somebody else helping monitor that can then turn it over to the police? I don't know.
So the conversation is additional staff.
Or just additional duty. It's not staff. If she's getting called out for X, Y, and Z's problem, what's a generator that's beating like a drum all night long? Why is that any different? I don't understand that. To me personally, I don't understand why that requires an officer.
If we had every single, just say for a moment, we had every single business on West Market full, every single retail establishment full, we had double the sidewalk cafes, would we still be having this conversation? Because we'd still be adding work to the police department.
No, because that additional revenue would probably generate the same conversation in another group.
So isn't that a discussion for a completely different group?
No, because we are approving or potentially approving the need for resources with the food trucks and the food carts before we have the example that you just gave us. If we had the example that you just gave us, that revenue would be available and you could say, oh, look at all the new revenue that was generated by the increased property values, by the increased, not income taxes, the mercantile taxes. And you could say, okay, let's dedicate that to having another person down there. We don't have that in this situation. We're talking about approving something that is not yet
Cards pay mercantile.
there.
Yeah, they're gonna pay
There.
mercantile tax.
The cards pay mercantile.
Yeah, well,
And we
mercantile
established that they're
tax
gonna
is-
pay
The
licensing
property
fees.
taxes,
All right,
you'll,
yes.
They're paying a health department.
They're gonna play a health
Right.
department license, they're gonna pay a new
Right.
business application, we just don't know what that would be yet.
No, but all those things,
filling the
right,
vacant spaces on the first floor doesn't change the property taxes that you're pulling,
it does over time.
right? And one could argue that food trucks can do the same thing over time, increase property values.
I'd like to hear that argument.
I like to hear that argument.
There isn't one brick and mortar restaurant owner that I've talked to that thinks this whole thing is a good idea. And I've queried a whole bunch of them that I've run into. Just say, what do you think of this conversation that's going on? And I'm not saying I'm against it. I don't care. I mean, and I own 2 restaurants, but there's a lot of people that disagree with that. So I think we have to be careful that, your point to Michael is very true. And just because he said it and he's a councilman, doesn't make it true either. Because the first floor is empty doesn't increase or decrease the property taxes. It's when they become delinquent and stop paying,
Or when the RDA has already taken them over and the building's worth $1.
Right, I completely agree with
Which is what
that.
we
I
have.
completely agree with
Okay, I
that.
think
So-
we're sort of veering off. I think how about this? How about if I talk to the police department about the noise regulations and we'll see what they do, what their process is, and I'll talk to Blake and Mike, and I'll also see if we can't push the private support getting additional deployment out. Is that helpful?
It's helpful.
and we'll bring that back.
But we're not talking about private deployment to this situation, we're talking about
We're talking
in
about
general.
overall,
Yes.
right?
Yes, okay, right.
Overall, I'm just trying to address Michael's concerns about somebody enforcing the noise regulations if there are 30 carts out there, which there won't be, at least not in the central business district. Can we move on to licensing fees and the issuing process? I would, I just lost my phone.
It is 4:46.
Can you tell me when it's about 20 after you're leaving at 5? We have to close down at 5:30 today, so if we can move through this conversation. Licensing fees and issuing process. Let's talk about the issuing process of the licenses for the cart vendors. We had talked about, what's the process now?
To license a cart. I just check. I have a whole list of things check.
Well, it's still the names drawn from a hat, right?
Well, I make sure that you have hand sinks. I make sure temperatures are held. I make sure you have NSF approved equipment. I make sure you have a serve safe. I make sure everything's easily cleanable. I go by the food code and I go through your cart. There's no size limit. There's the water supply. It's hard when their commissary isn't within the city because now you have two different people checking to make sure the business is going to be ran properly. Because if there is a foodborne illness, or I can't go outside the city to check what's going on out there. I can only check what's going on in the city.
But right now, somebody has a cart, they want to open up.
They have to bring it to me.
They bring you the application.
No, the application goes through the permit department.
And
And
then they choose
zoning-
by lottery, right now, the way it's.
right now, we go through a lottery.
And what's the cost associated with the licensing? With the application?
What'd you pay, Darren?
Like
Last
200.
year, I think 267. Don't quote me on that number. 267.
Around
For
that.
the application?
No,
For
for
the
the license. Once, because you don't pay until we figure out who is awarded.
Right.
No
And-
application.
So
No
that's,
application.
that's just that for the actual permit.
For his
Is there a
license.
separate license, or is there a separate fee with regards to valve inspection or submission, or is that just all inclusive?
All-
Includes everything?
It includes everything. Any place to say,
I
And
can't
you're
quote
good
me
to go.
Can't quote me on the dollar on that.
Okay, so about
Roughly.
between 250 and 300.
300, yeah.
yeah,
And you're good to go. And you're done.
Except for my, well, yeah, we pay mercantile, we pay local. I mean, there are other miscellaneous costs, I believe, that would be associated with any type of business. If you're just talking about permit-wise,
I'm just saying to get up and running, to open up shop in downtown.
that would be
Between
the
250 and
solo
300.
cost associated.
Do we know the cost of a special event license?
$35.
$35 for a 1 or 2 day. It's $20 if you are a city food vendor.
So it's 35
For
for a special
non,
event permit.
yeah, if you don't have a city license, it's 35. If you have a city license, it's 20. And that's good for a 1 or 2 day event.
So if we have 6 licenses available downtown for 10 location points, 20 licenses available for locations outside the CBD. What is a fair and equitable fee? What would you suggest? That's a fair and equitable fee.
I
What,
thought we were looking at going to auction.
there was conversation
I
about an
like the
option.
option. That was
That would determine the fair value price of what this license is going to be for a specific location and zone. Yeah.
My take on that Because I'm assuming with this existing ordinance, there would be something for the existing vendor to be grandfathered into that location, is that correct? Why not, Michael?
Why so?
Why would you want these?
You're not grandfathered in
I never
ever.
finished my sentence.
Because
If you're not, are you open-minded?
I'm open-minded, but you yourself
What
know that you are
benefits
never
does-
grandfathered in because you
what
have to
benefits the
reapply
city?
every year.
What benefit, let's ask this body, what benefits the city for the possibility of myself to be removed? Based on somebody coming in who may have a bigger bank account and saying, here, I'll give you X, so you, who does that benefit?
I understand that you want to protect your business, but you have
No,
never.
my question was, who does that benefit?
You have never been given a right prior to this. You have to reapply every single year.
Are we looking to do what's best for the city and the people of the city?
If we could sell your spot for $5,000, how does that not benefit the city?
Do you think you could sell that spot for
He's the only one
$5,000?
that bids on it.
Right, I didn't say we could, I didn't say we could. Somebody might pay $5,000 for your spot, but then you could go across the street to that second location and pay $260. And the idiot that paid $5,000
That's
just
not true.
spent.
Other people were going to apply and chose.
How many
It becomes
people
market-driven. There's been a
apply?
lot of discussion about being market-driven.
Right.
It becomes market-driven if it's.
It could be $1 if that's what the market is.
You can, I would think that you could put a floor on it. And if you have a cost structure that we can substantiate, that says we need $5,000 to manage this from Tamika's time and others involved, and we have 10 licenses, we need $500 license minimum. And then it's a bidding process with that as a floor. I don't know, I mean, that was just a suggestion I made, I didn't.
No, that makes
Is
total sense.
permits, planning and zoning gonna wanna manage that? Are they gonna wanna manage that bidding process? I'm just bringing up a point here.
Yeah, I think it would be once a year where there would be a window of application.
I would even suggest that we can broaden it to 2 years because I don't like, I mean, I tried to work to get you your license this last time around.
Why?
Why? Because you needed help.
So, no, why did you why did you try to help me and keep my license?
Because,
You wanted
You
me to
needed
be
help.
there, well, you wanted me to be there.
no,
right?
I've never eaten one of your hot dogs. I have no interest in your business. I thought you needed help, and I thought that this whole stupid pull a number out of the hat to determine if you get a business or not, and you do that the day before the guy's supposed to know whether or not he has a business. I thought that was the worst business model I had ever heard of for permitting anybody.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
Now, I want to make sure that this auction occurs in June or July for the next coming year or the next coming 2 years, so people can actually create a business model and get prepared to set up for business.
Couldn't you potentially have the same issue at some point though, where somebody's trying to operate a business, and because of something that's out of their control, they can't continue their business because there's other people that come in for money?
Well, but if you're that
no.
successful in your location, and you've just been running it for 3 years, then you should be able to
Yeah,
come up with the
but what
money.
if somebody comes in and 6 people come in and buy all 6 licenses and then he's out of the city? I'm talking an extreme, obviously. We talk a lot of extremes here, because it would take a long time for that to happen, but
Isn't that a free market?
I don't know, is the government's place to regulate free market? No.
Where is the
It's not
regulation?
regulating it, it's opening it up to free market.
I don't know a lot about politics, it's just for some reason, the idea makes me uneasy, so I'll just push that.
Which one, the auction?
The auction thing, yeah. It just
Well,
doesn't
we
seem.
have-
It doesn't bode well for the image. It doesn't bode a pleasant, welcome business environment image, in my opinion.
And does the current thing is this lottery, that it's just completely random whether or not you're.
No, I
have a
agree,
business.
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree
no, I
with that.
agree with that.
And the
I do.
problem is
I do.
if you have the locations, if we have 6 locations that we're selling, licensing, and we put the floor at $750 a location because we need $4,200 on 6, and we sell the first 5, but the 6th one's not sold, we've underserviced the city and the taxpayers.
Sure.
Because that's a location that wasn't of interest to the purchasing public.
It's true.
And there's no premium for the better locations. That's the part that doesn't make any sense to me.
So this property is owned by the citizens of York. So their interest, to me, is a priority. So I mean, that's why I think this auction thing is the best idea, because it's the free market saying who's gonna pay the most gets the spot.
Gets the spot that they think is best,
Right.
which can be totally bogus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing happened in Lancaster when they opened up their one permit. You know, they auctioned off the spot in Lancaster Square. 2 food trucks wanted it. They got bid up to $10,000. Christine from Urban Olive bought it. The space ended up being horrible. She had issues, security issues with the homeless, with rodents, all kinds of stuff like that. The city just gave her most of her money back last year or so. So, I mean, there is some precedent for that. And that's actually the only case I found where an auction was tried, where it was run up, and I'm sure the city was happy they got that $10,000, but then in 3 years they had to give it back to her. They didn't have to. They decided to give it back to her because they thought it didn't end up being fair. So I'm not saying I'm against it or for it. There's something about it that is known.
Well, so what's the alternative? Is that this body determines the value of each space and we just sell the spaces?
Yeah.
We can do that based on pedestrian counts. We have pedestrians.
Well, that does limit
And
the
traffic.
capacity of capital to influence the decision. Everybody interested in this spot, put your name in, figure it out, write a check, who you pull. How do you differentiate
So we're
between
still gonna
buyer
do-
1 and buyer 10?
So we're still gonna do the
First
lottery?
one, still- Well, and the
But not on the price
auction
basis.
the auction is kind of a lottery.
Of course it's a lottery.
No, the
It's a
auction.
different, of course it's a
It
lottery.
is because
Of course it's
that
not.
business who was there for 2 years could conceivably lose it, just like.
Like, with no
people
fault
that-
of my
That
own.
doesn't make it a lottery, that makes it go
But this-
to the highest bidder. If a
Right.
lottery is taking something out of the hat, it's completely random.
I think the question is that if we're issuing a new particular license, whether on an auction basis, whatever, are we still gonna mandate that every year that it's auctioned off again? To me, that doesn't make sense.
Well, that's why I just said
It's
it.
gotta be conducive if you're gonna take a license and you're gonna be paying this particular price for it, okay? Whether you do good or not. You know, is the city gonna determine, okay, you have an established business, we want you to continue to doing business. This is the fee that you paid, okay? Whatever it is, okay? And make it continually renewable.
You can't do that. You can't have the existing business, just let them renew. If that existing business then decides, I'm not gonna be here anymore, then that's.
I'm not saying it's auto renewal,
That is
I'm
not
just
a problem.
saying it comes up, the city's gonna ask, are you gonna continue? Not, all right, it goes back into the pool.
And it goes up front.
Absolutely.
So what we used to do with market stands. So.
The existing process that we're looking to amend, which is kind of why we started a bunch of this with the lottery process, the chance of it, I have no control over, which is what we're looking to modify. Same thing with the auction, I have no control over an auction process.
Right, but Jim's option, which sounds great, once you have won the auction, once you've determined the value of that spot, you would control that spot until you decide that you're no longer gonna pay your annual fee.
And the annual fee would be the auction rate, the rate that it was purchased at the auction the first time. And that would be the annual rate.
Is this body opposed to doing the auction process for the rest of the locations? I mean, it's such a, you know, of course I want to operate, but, you know, you said it is the interest of the city, you know, that you have in mind, and I know you can't logically poll this, talk to everybody in the city, but without a shadow of a doubt, I know people want me there. And why shouldn't we try to accommodate that? It's not a nice conversation to have when someone says, well, why were you moved over here? The outcome is because somebody has a bigger bank account. I guess, I mean, is that what we do? You know?
I don't know how to argue for the support of that one specific establishment in this whole conversation.
But what's the opposition for the possibility of this new process that Jim spoke about being implemented for the additional potential spots that we have. You know,
Is there opposition to grandfathering the one license in?
I would struggle, the only thing I would struggle with, and has nothing to do with whoever's at the table or whoever owns that location is, if we pick 10 locations, and I actually have changed my mind and don't like the auction idea anymore, I like the foot traffic cost idea.
Yeah.
I actually like that idea. But all that gets divided into our cost.
What's associated with?
What's our cost? I mean, the questions we aren't asking, and you do have it down here, but refuse. You know, well, the city picks up. Well, is the city gonna have to pick up 3 times this week because they're there?
No, we already determined that everybody's gonna be responsible for their own refuse.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. We've determined that they're gonna be responsible inside their cart or in their truck. Everything that leaves, that gets stuffed into the garbage cans around the city is gonna have to be managed by city employees. Now, does that double the pickup? Triple the pickup?
I think the question that has been asked is that, and we haven't determined, is that, yeah, we have a 267 or between 200 and whatever for the permit, but we haven't looked at the particular line items.
Right.
You know, what's the health fee?
Right.
What's
That's what
the
I'm trying to get at.
the municipality drop-off fee? You know, all the fees that we can incur within that license. You know, if you're looking to set up a particular cart or food truck or whatever sidewalk business you want to do, no one's determined in their right mind, well, am I going to be able to make this amount of money, okay, knowing that all these particular fixed costs that I initially paid during the first year, and what are those costs going to be recurring, you know, after the first year in operation that we do this, the city's going to come back, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do a study and say, we're spending too much on this, these fees have to go up. But if we haven't physically agreed, what are the number of fees that we need to add in addition to that? Okay.
Is that something you could put together, Jim? What you think it would cost with licenses, with additional licenses on the street?
I don't know, I'd have to, think, what do you think? I mean, you're closer in touch, I mean, we can put it up for refuse and some of those kind of things.
Well, hers only comes out to like 100 or like $50.
Is that for the infractions or for the
It's for 3, and I'm just estimating, I don't know your salary or anything like that, but an hour and a half, she said 30 minutes per 3 calls. And of course that'll change when you're talking about these things not being 1 block away from City Hall.
And it could be different because he had minor issues, but it could be like a major issue, and I could spend a lot of time just in one spot.
But, so this comes out, imagining that salary and benefits and everything like that was about $33, comes out to $50 that she spent for her
Are you including
hour
emissions,
and a half.
the hourly inspections, is it?
No,
Sorry, the yearly inspection?
I did not include the yearly inspection. How long does it take you for a yearly inspection?
For a cart,
Yeah.
I could spend half an hour to 45 minutes with them.
Okay. And then how about the paperwork stuff?
It's done on a laptop, so
Okay,
I have to work
that's-
offline. That's why I haven't seen them yet, because I don't have, I don't want to say proper equipment. My laptop has to stay plugged in. So for me to see him, I don't have an
I've got the
outlet.
same problem.
So I have to do everything on the state system.
So we're talking about $75 to $100 per card for her efforts at the current rate with only minor issues.
Well, that's saying, so I mean,
But if there's issues, if there's no issues, then we're saving $100 on the car that doesn't have any issues.
Well, not 100 because she still has to do the
Still
inspection.
have to see
So that would be covered by the licensing.
Well, this
I mean,
is the
That's
license.
what we're trying to figure out.
This is the
We
license.
start with the costs, we
Yeah.
start with the expenses, and then figure out from there what it would.
because I mean, he's had
You've been out to his car 4 times in the last 3 years.
That's correct.
so I mean, that's approximately 1.
3 years, or was that just 2013?
Well, average.
I believe I had one 2012, and she saw me 3 times in 2013. That's the last time I've seen the neighbor for any type of concern. So for the past 18 months.
Does the initial inspection take much longer than the yearly inspection?
Usually the initial is easier because they normally don't have anything on cart.
True.
It's like a brand new building, it's empty. But the next one is more detailed.
Can I just say one other thing? I'm going back to what we were talking about as far as the opposition to grandfather myself into my location is that talking about what the best interest for the people of the city who I see. I mean, there's been a lot of turnover with cars, at least a few over the past couple of years, 4 or 5 years. We've had some issues. We've had people being asked to leave by the courthouse. We had an issue with somebody on where I'm located. I've been a main constant, and I've showed the people that this can be done, and I can stay consistent for the people. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, potentially, if I was removed from the spot, the whole concept of why for the people, the changeover, the turnover, I just, objectively speaking, of course this is my interest, but how could anybody say that that's good for the city to possibly have someone who's been a constant there and done great things for the people? And the people love me, and I love the people. That has to speak volumes, especially for the people that were unable to do it previously to me. I'm there all the time, just to show my face sometime, in cold weather and stuff, but that's another topic, I just wanted to voice my opinion on that, and, I'd like to know who's in opposition of that, and I'm open-minded, why are they in opposition?
So we have 2 options on the table. We have the auction, and then we have the pedestrian count flat fee pricing.
How are you gonna figure out a value based on pedestrian count?
Well, we back into it by what it would cost the city. We have issued 26 licenses. If we can get some sort of pro forma that lays out what it could potentially cost the city in enforcement, in trash collection, in permits, inspections, and that sort of thing, then we back into it with 26 licenses and figure it out from there.
Would you do that foot count, whatever, per space, or would you do CBD? This is the average.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Outside of it.
We have the pedestrian counts for the CBD.
Correct, but not per cart space that we're talking about.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Would
So
we price it per the space, or just CBD is this price, and then outside?
Well, no,
this price
that's
because
why
of
I'm
that?
saying, if we use the pedestrian counts, you could charge a premium for those
Sure.
locations that see more pedestrian traffic or more vehicular traffic.
I mean, I think you need to start with the base, obviously, health department license fee, and then for whatever other costs that you have above that, to just process them as a business. You have to get a business license too, right? Or is that the same?
And that was an initial
That
initial
was
part of
initial
the
thing.
startup packet.
Yeah.
Yes. That's not recurring.
I know the regular price for my mobile units that are licensed is $150, just a regular mobile unit.
So where does the 267 come from?
He has a hand cart that is in a fixed location, so I didn't make up the fees. There's a paper for sidewalk, hand cart, and there it has fees for it because he's not mobile. Now, other hand cart that I have, you have to remain mobile. He's the only one that is in a fixed location where he doesn't.
There's hand carts allowed that just go walk around.
Hand carts are allowed, they just have to constantly be moving, like an ice cream.
Like an ice cream truck.
So I do have hand carts and they pay $150.
Do we have
Where
them?
are they?
You do?
I have a Italian nice guy, he walks around, he's licensed.
Does that,
And
that
the
and that
CBD?
doesn't follow the food?
They're
court?
just not allowed in the central business district.
That's why.
Okay, so your ice cream, pan carts, your,
They just have to stay
Okay.
out of downtown.
Or not get caught?
I didn't know that too.
Because I've seen the ice cream guy.
Did not know that, okay. Oh my gosh, one more thing. Add that too.
nice.
All right, so we're talking about, so where do we fall on the license issue by auction or by pricing location?
I think we're looking at two different philosophies here. I hear, let's make sure that we have, that we know how much it costs, and then we split that up among those that are going to have carts. And then it's what's the value of the real estate that the citizens of York are providing to these businesses, which to me is the auction model. Because or I guess it could be done through the pedestrians, but I'm not sure how yet, because your explanation was that we cross-reference it with the costs and split it up that way. But I'm really interested in having the value. I find it one of the inconsistencies that I find in the competition between the brick and mortars and the carts and the food trucks is that the free market has determined the value of their establishments, and then they have to add on all the additional costs after that. But we're not doing that with these. The free market isn't determining anything in the model where we just figure out the cost to the city to have these, and then we split that up among the number of food carts that we have. So I'm much more interested, or I'm at least, right now I'm equally interested in looking at what the value is that we are providing by providing the space. We are the lessors. We are leasing public space to private for-profit businesses. What's the value of that space?
What do you guys think about the auction?
I think the auction's hilarious as long as there's no as long as it's free market and there's no floor on it. If someone can buy a license for $20, why not? If it's gonna be a free market license, it's gonna be free market, don't put a bottom on it.
Well, no, there's plenty of auctions that have a bottom on it to
I'm
make
saying
sure
free
that-
market, if we're gonna let the market decide this, like, if we're just gonna let the market choose, then don't put a bottom on it. And if it's only worth $10, that's what it is.
Tamika, thank you.
No problem.
I
If
appreciate
it's worth
you.
10,000, then that's what it's worth.
I mean, the same is true in York now, you know, people buying those for $1,000. And that's
Yeah.
the same thing, right?
Right, but then they have to put 100,000 into it. This is space that is prepared and provided by the city of York.
I'm uncomfortable with the auction idea. This is what I saw. I know Christina personally. I know what she went through with that. I just know it was a mess. I mean, I don't think the city had a good time with it in the end. And I mean, I don't think they expected that to happen. And there was a lot more scarcity.
Where was this spot that suddenly out of nowhere they had rodent problems?
It was next to Brunswick. You know where the Ben's Park is in Asher Square?
Yeah.
Next to Boulevard. There's like that really empty space that everybody's trying to do stuff with for the last 20 years.
Right.
It was just in there.
I mean, they just had rats coming out of the woodwork, or
Really
what?
out of Brunswick, yeah. They asked, actually, the city asked me to come. Rats she saw.
Can I get, before we leave, can I get some sort of consensus as to which direction we should go? Whether we should pursue the auction, whether we should pursue the auction with grandfather, or whether we should go with the flat rate? What do you think?
I like the valuation, you know, if I know people may be uncomfortable with regard to the auction or cap, but, you know, precedence in the case scenario is based on one license. We're looking at multiple licenses, okay? So in essence, if I am a bidder and I want that space and somehow I get outbid, well, okay, I want to go on to the next one. It's just as feasible. If I don't get that one, I'm going to go on to the next one. Okay, so, with regards to the free market, you're gonna look and set a precedence with regards to a MIT, because you're gonna do the due diligence of looking at what it's gonna cost the city. You're gonna have to meet that requirement first. And then from there, we'll determine the valuation of that site.
So auction with a baseline.
Auction with a baseline, but I also am pro with regards to grandfathering Darren's park. I think it's just going to set sort of a humanitarian viewpoint from the city's aspect of it. But then it's also going to help with regards to if we do this, if we set the auction price and this person just bought this particular space, which is in the market district, and then he bought it for $4,000. Well, then come annual renewable, that's the same type of fee he's going to do it. And if he does well, then he's going to pay that. If he doesn't well, then it just goes back into the pool. So all that will determine that. If you try to go on foot traffic for any particular sites, you're still going to have to meet that base. Okay. Then you're going to have to determine what is going to be that cost per person, and if it's going to be feasible. Because right now you don't know. We deem that this particular site is of value, okay? But let's say I'm a popular food cart or a popular food truck and I'm on the other side. People are going to flock to that because that's what they want. And so now that becomes another valuation based on his business model, or his or her business model. So how is the city, or how is the committee, or how is, in general, is going to determine what the value of that is when it comes to annual renewable. So, someone can debate or, find out what they think about that.
I guess I'm okay with auction on the floor, in regards to, or just things that Ken did. In regards to Darren, I think council needs legal advice. And then something that hit me while I was thinking about that, because if I pay $4,000 for the spot across the street and he doesn't, I've got an anti-competitive situation that's created by you, which could lead you guys in problematic terms. Do I have, and I do like the extended option on renewal. I don't know how long or for what period. I certainly want accumulated costs to be accepted into that process. But then if it's forever, 3-year options with no end in sight on a window, you have to do 6 months pre the end of the 3 years, you have to renew it. Thinking in lease terms, am I again not creating an anti-competition situation? If I've got 6 food carts filling my 10 spaces and the new guy shows up and can't get a spot, period, do I have a problem? I don't know, that's way beyond my world. So I would urge you guys to think about advice. I don't know how you work through that, but I absolutely do not want any cost falling back in a situation where I think that we set a number like 267. No offense to Tamika, but to give you an example, it cost my company $62 to cut a check. Now you go, how the hell is that possible? It's because the requester makes it, their boss approves it, it gets sent to accounting. You don't know, or you don't think through the planning process of what it takes to get all this done. I file it. Really? Who else touches it? How many times a year could they conceivably go through those files and touch those things? Too often we discount the cost to what it takes. And in York County, we're one of the worst at it. In saying, well, I'll just assume that rather than pay an extra $20. And it ends up costing us $50. I don't want to see that to happen.
Right.
So that's understandable. So auction
with a floor,
with a floor,
and I think you need some.
with a
legwork.
grandfather, but we need to talk to the solicitor about,
Like,
Making sure you do it.
Yeah,
I don't care. I mean, honestly, I don't care. He's been out there busting his hump.
Right.
So, yeah, some reward, but if you don't do it right, you create an anti-competitive situation, you could create a lot more headache than you really want to be part of.
Jim, what do you think?
I'm fine with it.
All right, ditto. Jim, ditto. Aaron.
Auction with a grandfather.
Ditto.
When we say grandfather, what is the cost that we're talking about grandfather?
We haven't gotten it.
Whatever the baseline would be.
Whatever the baseline would be, but I'm concerned
So Darren, you
about
are
the
aware that
anti-compete.
costs may increase?
Based on where we're going with the auction,
Well, based on if it is a grandfather situation after it goes through legal.
I would then roll into the process that was going in place for the other cards, correct? Whatever that process would be.
We haven't gotten
I'm
there
just
yet,
trying
but
to
I'm
get,
just.
I'm just
Yes,
trying to get
it could
consensus on the
potentially increase.
philosophy.
It could
That's
also
all I'm trying
potentially
to do.
decrease.
Yes.
Nikki?
It couldn't decrease.
Well,
Conceivably.
I would
unlikely.
go with the pedestrian option, only because there's less confusion and it's easier for us to control the cost of what's happening, and then we can push those costs onto the vendors. It's easier for us to say, hey, this is what's gonna cost us, this is the premium for our services and the spot, this is what it costs. Instead of, then we can review from that a year later and say, this is what we need to tweak, because it's not permanent, so I go pedestrian.
Can I just ask you, when you said plus the spot, how are you determining the value of the spot?
We can determine that value based on, okay, if you were here, you see this many people, we could, I guess, pro forma it to make sure, to say that you could make this much more money being here rather than being somewhere else. This money, we're gonna make a percentage of that, and that is the premium. It could be determined in a number of ways.
I would say a flat health department fee or current fee for citywide that everybody pays the same thing. And then a fee for outside of the central business district that's flat, based off of the costs. And then within the 6, 10 spots, whatever, I would say based off the pedestrian count. One of the reasons I don't like the auction too is that would make it so vendors would only be able to start a business once a year. So they wouldn't be able to, if they wanted to start in the middle of June and the auction was in December, then they would have
That's
to.
a really good point.
They'd have to wait 6 months to actually start their business.
So flat rate, but in the CBD, it would be based on pedestrian count, so there could be a premium associated with it. And this, because it's not the auction, they can open them.
And I'd also say I would-
It's a rolling application period. It's
First
not
come,
once.
first served.
First come, first served.
First come, first served?
Yeah, if there's somebody occupying the space, that application, that license is. So,
If they're all full, they're all full.
would that, please say whatever, would that be, would you be in favor of myself grandfather?
I would, yes, I would be. Yeah, and I think that would be the easiest way to do that, because you would essentially be treated as the first person with that.
It'd be much easier to have someone come in knowing that they can be successful in that area.
Say that again, I'm
It'd
sorry.
be much easier for someone to come in seeing that they can be successful in that area. That makes the whole option look attractive.
Okay.
What I'm saying, under the first come, first serve, it's relatively simple to grandfather you, because you're just the first in line to get a vendor location.
Yeah, I like the flat fee, that's what the restaurants are paying. They don't have to go for an auction. Flat fee that covers everything. That's a premium for the CBD makes sense.
Yeah, if we can value the real estate properly in the market, square footage and, well, even more than that, I wouldn't mind. That's a really important part to have businesses be able to start at all times of the year. I'm not sure yet how we're going to do the costs, because while we have, we're gonna have to figure out how many licenses we're actually going to sell. We make 26 available, but that doesn't mean you divide the cost by 26. So we gotta figure out, are we gonna get 20% participation and therefore divide everything?
And there's no way to know.
By
Maybe
five,
There's
divide
no
everything
way to
by
gauge how many
5.
licenses.
Maybe we should really try to figure out what those costs are first, like per cart. Like what is just one cart, what burn is that?
Right, well, that's what I've been working on over
Okay.
there.
And I mean, if it's not an exorbitant amount, and that's just, like I was saying, there'd be a flat fee for outside the central business district, I mean, that could be that fee. So you have
Right,
a permit.
but outside the central business district, everything costs more to do,
It's true.
because you have to go out and do it.
Yeah,
to go out and do
all I'm
enforcement,
saying
you
is
have to-
establish that fee and try to figure it out per cart. Because it is gonna be specific to how many carts you have, and it'll scale the more carts you have. And then the extra premium for central business district, that's where you cover kind of your overage that you might not cover with other stuff. But I think the city needs to cover their base before anything else. I mean,
So is that something, is that something that maybe Jim and I can work on and you can pull together a good estimate of what it would cost the city? I don't think we've done that yet.
For Tamika's cost, couldn't we just take her hours and divide it by how many businesses she's inspecting right now over the year?
We would have to give thought to what other costs are incurred by the city, whether it's trash, whether it's,
That would be a good number for her.
So I think, just guesstimating, that $75 to $100 per business would work with Tamika, which is what I had come up with.
yeah, I think that'd be pretty close. I think that runs in line with most.
Although she's underestimating her own work. I mean, I
right,
can't,
to Bill's point.
I cannot walk down there and walk back and file my paperwork and talk to somebody all in a half an hour. So I'd put it 100 to 150. And then, as I said, now once the other 20 licenses that aren't in the business district, now you're talking about getting in a car, going somewhere, all these additional expenses. So, but I mean, those are the only ones I have access.
I mean, she already inspects everything out there too, right? So I mean, she's already out there.
She's already out
Yeah,
there.
basically.
I know you have a lot of experience with the carts. What are the annual cart fees in your experience?
I actually don't know the
Ballpark.
My actually does actually have 2 or 3 cart licenses. I don't know what the fees are. I think they're about the same as they are, 200 to 300. Lancaster, for a truck in Lancaster, it's closer to 600 to 700 right now.
So I've got 4 in favor of the auction, 4 in favor of the flat fee.
Are you decided to?
I'm not allowed to put it
I really
Well,
think it would be valuable to do the number research and come back and maybe look at those and then look at what our baseline is compared to that.
And I can bring the pedestrian counts and we can talk about the locations and what those premiums might be. Does that make sense?
It does beg the question, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Robert, you made a point, and I don't know that he made it. We're covering cost. We haven't discussed value at all.
That was my point about property value.
It's X to cover the cost. But what's the value of doing that? What's the value of signing a lease to be at this location, to be at Joyce Cafe? What's the value of that versus across the street or someplace else? And I think you have to put up, I think there has to be some kind of charge for that. I don't care.
Well, isn't that
either
what we're
way.
talking about with the pedestrian count premium?
Can be. Depends on your counts and when it's taken, because I would think that your count, I don't know, I'd want to know where your counts come from. Is it business day? Is it Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings?
No, it's weekdays.
See, I don't know that if I was actually gonna buy a card and put it out, that I'd want it to be based on that. I don't know,
Well, all I
I'd
can give you
have
is
to
what we
look at
have.
those. I know that,
All I can give you is what we have.
but I just think that there's some, it might be a mix.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think that
you shouldn't shortchange the city taxpayers on value. And I'm not trying to screw anyone, but
And just in addition, and I was thinking of this, nobody else's taxes, I mean, when we talk about covering fees, other places, the other restaurants, they have fees and stuff too, but like, while it's based on, yeah, everybody's taxes are on top of that, and they're based on property values. So just to cover the cost, we're in a real gray area, because some things are paid for by the restaurants with their licenses and things, and then other things are paid for by their taxes. But in the process, we're not defining, we're not defining that, and the market is kind of telling us, so we have to be careful once we move away from the auction, because to me, the auction is a great tool to tell us what the market value is of the space. I don't know if we want that as the process or not. Obviously, since I changed my mind, I'm back and forth on this.
Do people pay property taxes for the right to own property in the city or to run a business? And make money off
to
of
possess a piece of property.
Right.
The-
So if you possess a 12 by 12 space
Mhm.
of city-owned property, there's a value to it.
Okay.
And that's,
And people that lease
and
the
this-
property would indirectly pay that through their rent.
Correct.
The city doesn't set that value.
yeah, they do. Assessments.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
So I mean, with the.
But it's based on the property value, not on the business value.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So wouldn't even the pedestrian count or the auction be the same thing as if we were doing assessments off of the value of the business, not the property?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, to some level,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that begs the question, can you assess that blank space of city property? And put a number to that? I don't know. I mean, and then do you really want that? Because city taxes times that value could blow you away.
I think just like we value the property that we're trying to lease to these vendors, we have to value the fact that they want to move into our area and do business there too. There has to be something attached to that. We're attractive enough to them that they want to kind of help us build our area.
Which is
It
the
has to be
point,
kind of
which is the
discounted
point
in
that's
ways.
which is the point that I was gonna make, is that the not mentioned factor is the person that's wanting to take this site or that site, and what they value or estimate they value what the market value is gonna be for that location. Foot traffic, even though you turn the basis for them, if they can get a cheap price, they're gonna get it at a cheap price. But again, we look at underlying costs from the city aspect of it, okay, what is it? There's a lot of unforeseen, like Mike mentioned, it's like gray areas of what additional costs may be valued to that. But at the same time, what is it gonna be, what's it worth to the person?
So here's what we're gonna do. I'll get with Michael and Jim over the course of the next couple of weeks, and we'll try and Tamika, and we'll try and hash out exactly well, it's not gonna be exactly, but it's gonna be an estimate as to what these additional licenses would be for, what they would mean for the city. So we'll reconvene and give some thought, do some research to other communities, and we'll come back next month and we will decide whether it's gonna be auction or flat rate. Helpful?
Thank you.